It has been 11 months since the war began in Ukraine. Russia has struggled to make a breakthrough, but that hasn't stopped in casualties rising across Ukraine. How are the coming months looking like? Let's decode it. Ukraine has received intelligence that the Russian president wants to seize the Donbas region by March. This is a directive given to the new Russian commander. Remember, a referendum took place in the two regions that make up the Donbas region. Russia installed voting booths for people of Luhansk and Donetsk. Without any proof, Moscow soon declared that a majority had chosen to become a part of Russia. It's the new directive by Vladimir Putin. But it is not the first time a timeline like this has been laid out. In the past, it had to be postponed multiple times. So what's new this time? Well, Russia has a new commander, Valery Gerasimov. And a military leadership shake-up by Moscow has never been good news for Ukraine. If Putin is actually planning this, the first thing that Ukraine needs is ammunition. For the past 11 months, Ukraine has been able to fight back because of the West. Arms and intelligence provided by Kiev's partners have helped ward off the Russians. But let me tell you why the future of all that is looking dire. The Daily Mail report says that the unending support for Ukraine is making the UK weaker. And this is a warning by the head of the British Army. The chief wrote a letter to his soldiers. The document lays out the realities for Britain, the reality of donating equipment. So far, Britain has sent battle tanks, armoured vehicles, heavy guns, high-velocity rockets and drones. These are being sent to Ukraine in the name of aid. So there is no return guaranteed. What this is doing is creating a dearth in the UK's own arsenal. The issues do not end with this. Let's now talk about Germany. Kiev has requested heavier vehicles such as the Leopards from Berlin. These are battle tanks and a significant step up in Western support. But Berlin has not ruled it out. Here's the twist. The arms maker says this consignment will only be ready by 2024. That's a year away. What is the guarantee that Kiev will need it then? More importantly, will the war drag on for another year? So far, Germany has become one of Ukraine's top military supporters. But the question is, will it continue to be? In every news conference, from Joe Biden to Emmanuel Macron, the Western allies have promised to support Ukraine for as long as it takes. Even the NATO chief has warned that it'll be a long-term support. But how long is too long? Can the group continue to send arms endlessly? Let me give you context through one specific weapon. 155mm howitzer is very common artillery used in Ukraine during this war. The US weapons industry normally produces this in 30,000 rounds each year. Ukraine blasts those many in about 2 weeks. So you understand the imbalance we're talking about. Without new production and more funding, as well as indefinite patience, the supply to Ukraine cannot continue for as long as it takes. For more on this story, we're now joined by John Erath, a policy director of the Center for Arms Control and Non-Proliferation in Washington. Thank you so much for speaking to WION. The question simply is, how long is too long? Have we now come to a point where 11 months into this war, Kiev's allies may be beginning to run out of both ammunition and patience? They keep claiming publicly that they will support Ukraine for as long as it takes. But realistically speaking, how do you really see this panning out?
I think that thus far there has been a determination to support Ukraine on the part of NATO members and other countries, and that support continues. But you raise a very good question as to the availability of supply. And that is a decision that each country is going to have to make based on its own national requirements and national defense needs. That is, how much they can continue to supply to Ukraine, of what types and for how long. And those are going to be some difficult decisions. Let's not lose sight of two other very important factors. One is that Russia is also facing shortages, and that ultimately what may bring this war to an end is that both sides may run out of additional ammunition and equipment. Certainly the Russian arms industry is suffering some severe handicaps and shortages of parts and components, and unable to replace what they are losing. So that may have an effect further down the line. The other very important factor is that while Western weapons and equipment have been important in supporting Ukraine, the key factor in the conduct of the war thus far has been the determination of the Ukrainian people to resist. Without that, all of the weapons in the world would not make a difference. And that is what will be the determining factor for how long Ukraine resists and how long the war goes on. The simple fact that Ukraine's people are resisting every day Russian aggression and continue to do so. If simple numbers of weapons were the key factor in determining how the war would come out, Russia would have won a long time ago. But they are not. And while the support helps keep up the morale of the Ukrainian people, it is the will of Ukraine to resist the aggression that has been the dominant factor so far in this war.
You know, I understand the point that you're making, but we can actually flip this argument around. While absolutely you're right in saying that the Ukrainians have shown a commendable spirit during this long and difficult war, the way they have fought for their country is absolutely admirable. Having said that, I think we can all agree that without the kind of support from NATO that Ukraine has received, Ukraine would not have lasted this long. Putin had said this war was going to be over in 3 days. Of course, he couldn't have been more wrong. But NATO's support has played a very significant role. Now, Ukraine is urging Western allies to make faster deliveries of arms because Russia continues to intensify its attacks. Do you believe that the promised heavy weapon deliveries can come in time? Also, what do you make of the fact that Putin keeps changing his military leadership in this war? Do you see it as a sign of nervousness or just a change of tack?
I see it as a sign of failure on the part of the Russian leadership to accomplish the goals that have been set by the political leadership. The military leadership is not doing a very good job. That has been well documented. Russian military assets are not being employed in an optimal way, and they are failing to achieve most of their tactical objectives. So when that happens, it's fairly logical that a change in leadership may be tried to see if there is any difference. I think, though, that the Russian problems go deeper than just the leadership. It is structural in the Russian military, and it also is largely based on an unrealistic set of objectives. As you said, Russia felt that it could win the war in a few days, and that was not the case. It clearly was not the case. But based on these unrealistic goals, the leadership changes have continued to this time. As for your other question, how long the war would have gone on without Western assistance, I think that's very difficult to say. Certainly the assistance from NATO countries has been important. It has been significant. But as I said earlier, without the will of the Ukrainian people to resist, that assistance would have been meaningless. So it's a situation where the one is helping the other. And that is something that I think is going to continue.
All right. But the question on everyone's mind still remains just how much longer is this war going to drag on? Because clearly it's not only hurting Ukraine, it is hurting the entire world. On that note, John Irath, thank you so much for speaking to WION.
Thank you very much.